Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is the great and powerful Zilla, alive after some pretty damn serious surgery. I'm sorry about the hiatus, but they replaced my carotid artery from my chest all the way up to my ear. So, yeah, my brain function wasn't good at all before, and now I'm just plain crazy. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about today is these make-believe German carriers. None of these ever existed. If anything, they were a thought in somebody's mind, maybe a plan. But as I said before, even if they had existed, the Royal Navy would never allow these things to stay alive for very long. In the meantime, in real life here, I'm being attacked by this monster. So, while I take care of that, give me a minute and I'll be right back with you. Okay, back to the German carriers. Now, back in 1941-42, after the Bismarck and the Tirpitz were attacked by naval aircraft, the Kriegsmarine decided suddenly that they want an aircraft carrier. Now, they had the Graf Zeppelin, but that never progressed beyond the concept training stage. It was never actually in service. Um, it it never actually took part in the war. It was just there in the Baltic Sea. But they came up with this concept that, if we had carriers, they could protect our ships. So that's what the idea the Germans had behind the carriers was to provide fighter cover for their ships. Not necessarily the same role that the Royal Navy had or the United States or Japan had at the time. Similar, but not quite the same. The other issue they had was the building program. Most of the German steel, metals, and fuel were devoted to the Army, not the Navy, and they were devoted to U-boats, not to the surface fleet, which never actually had any chance of doing anything against the home fleet or after the United States entered the war, certainly not the United States Navy. So what you have is in this game just an added in imaginary concept by Wargaming about what if. What if the Germans had these ships? All of these ships were to be based upon hulls that already existed. So let's take a look at what we got. We're talking about the Rhine. The Rhine had the Heinkel 68 or the Rado 68 as its fighter aircraft. This thing was built in 1935 to 1937. It was a nimble little fighter, but it stood no chance against the advanced fighters it faced in the Spanish Civil War. So it rapidly fell out of service with the Germans, but it continued as a trainer all the way up into World War II. Okay. Then after that, we have the Arado 95, which is your torpedo bomber on the Rhine. And the Arado 95 was was a float plane, and only 47 were ever built, and most of them were exported. They never served with the German Luftwaffe or the Kriegsmarine, and only a few versions with wheeled landing gear were built. Most of them were float planes. Okay, so that's kind of an imaginary, wargaming thinking. What are we going to do? Well, let's put that on there. Okay. And again, this was one of those planes that were developed in the 1930s when Hitler tore up the Treaty of Versailles, decided he wanted a Luftwaffe. And then we have the Heinkel 50. This served from 1931 to 1944. It was not a frontline service plane, but what they did was they copied the Russian night witches on the Eastern Front, and they took some obsolete older biplanes, and these were some of them, and they used them for night harassment against the Soviet forces. So this was an active plane in World War II, and again, it served with the Luftwaffe from 1931 to 1944. It served its purpose. It was a reconnaissance plane. It also served as a oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? A dive bomber. Okay, we're going to move right along to the Weser. It's a V, even though it says W. It's German. Okay, And we start out with the BF-109E, the Emil. Now, there are thousands of articles on the Messerschmitt BF-109 that you can read about, although the Emil was the version that fought in the Battle of Britain, and it's considered by the Luftwaffe pilots to be one of the best versions of the Messerschmitt fighters during World War II. And this thing served throughout the war. It was constantly upgraded through many marks, served many roles, and it's the ubiquitous German fighter of World War II. Okay, um, you know, in the game, the rockets are all armor piercing, so using them against destroyers if you have to, yeah, but it's best used against cruisers, light cruisers, and battleships. And next we go to the torpedo bombers, and this is the Dornier 22. This thing was never used by Germany. It was built between 1938 and 1939, and it was export only. They were exported to Greece and they were exported to Chile, believe it or not. And when the Germans invaded Greece, they had to destroy these Dornier 22s. Most of them, again, were float planes, and again, never used by the German Navy or the German Luftwaffe. But, they put it in the game because reasons. All right. And finally, we have probably the most underappreciated plane on this list, and that is the Henschel 123. The Henschel 123 served throughout World War II as a ground attack aircraft, and it was the only ground attack aircraft until the introduction of the Henschel 129. Okay. Well, what do you mean they had the Stuka? No, the Stuka was a dive bomber. It was a precision weapon. This was a direct support weapon for the German Wehrmacht. So this was the ground attack aircraft of the Luftwaffe, and there was only one group of them, the Henschel 123. Remember it because it's a famous World War II plane, if you're not familiar with it already. Okay, and we'll move right along to the next ship on our list, which is the Parseval. Okay, and the Parseval, built on the hull of a Scharnhorst, by the way, equips the BF-109G. The BF-109G is the final iteration of the Messerschmitt fighters that served throughout World War II, and the G version had the big 37 millimeter cannon in the nose, or what was it, 20 millimeter? I can't remember, but it was built and upgraded as a result of contact with the Sturmovik on the Eastern Front. It served very well. It was a very famous fighter, the Gustav. And then we have the BF-110, which started out as the concept was to be a bomber escort, a bomber destroyer. There's a rumor, it's false, that it needed its own escort. That's not true. It was during strategy during the Battle of Britain that failed the BF-110, and also the German idea that this plane had to do everything, and no plane can do everything. Its takeoff weight and distance would have prevented it from ever being used on a carrier, to be honest. But here in the game, they put it as torpedo and dive and your dive bomber. The BF-110 was a highly successful night fighter ground attack aircraft. It never did fulfill its purpose as a destroyer aircraft. Okay, so torpedoes are very good in the game. They travel at 70 knots. They're very accurate. On the Parseval, you drop 3 at a time. All of the clips that you're going to see here in a minute are of the Parseval's planes. They all pretty much play the same as other planes, only the German torpedo bombers are extremely accurate, extremely fast, and they hit pretty damn hard. The dive bombers also hit extremely hard, but it's very difficult to get that perfect bow-on approach to a ship that's weaving and bobbing around and trying to avoid you at all costs with all the anti-aircraft coming up at you, especially at Tier 8 because you're going to be facing a lot of Tier 10s. So let's take a look at a couple of clips of in-game action, as it were. Here we have the torpedo bombers from the Parseval. These are BF-110Cs. You're going to drop down. Very narrow window to drop in. You lead your ship, you drop them, and in no time at all, they're on target. And when you fly out, you're going to have to stay straight for a little bit, and it's going to take out your planes. But as you can see, the result the torpedo hits and flooding, and I immediately take off with fighters after that. Here we are, the torpedo bombers again, coming in on a ship. Flak's coming up pretty darn seriously here. Again, give it some lead. Drop them. You don't have to give it that much lead because of the speed of the torpedoes. And as is my habit normally when I press the F key and bring them back, I launch the rocket planes. Everything on the German ships is armor piercing. You're not going to start any fires with the German carriers. So again, we're dropping. That was a perfect drop right in front of our ship, and it hit the enemy ship. Boom. He's dead. Okay. On to the next clip here as soon as this thing stops freezing on me. Okay. The game capture is by Overwolf, by the way. Okay, here we are again with the torpedo bombers. You're going to use your torpedo bombers far more than anything else. Okay, we're coming in. We're going to drop right over that island and try and get out of there alive. Odds are you're not, especially against a ship like a Massachusetts or something like that. Anti-aircraft monsters, and people complain, well, the Germans got through. Well, the ships, planes get through. Well, yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? Sit there and sacrifice planes the entire game? You know? Yeah, they will get through. And your secondaries are no joke either, as this ship is about to find out. That was a secondary kill by my ship. So, yeah. Okay, dive bombers. You coming straight in. Your reticle is directly underneath your planes, okay? Directly underneath them. All right, and this is not going to end well for me. All right. But I want to show you how the dive bombers operate because it's not like anything else. The reticle is directly underneath your planes. You see that? You got to angle your camera down. And then look at all that flak coming up at you. You drop them. Then 9 times out of 10, you're going to get this, a citadel. Sometimes 2 citadel. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to get that. All right? And what's a brief word while you watch this last clip on the rocket planes, because it didn't really have any footage of that. Rocket planes go in, the reticle's way out in front, it pulls back and then pushes forward again. It takes some getting used to. It's not like anybody else. Okay? And those are the German carriers so far. It's good to be back, guys. Hopefully I won't have any more medical setbacks. In the meantime, you guys have fun, be good to each other, and have a great, great day. Bye.